Travel is more than just ticking off countries. It's about the people, the culture, the food, the moments. I'm Pippa Hudson, and on Wonder the World, I invite you to join me every week as we explore destinations both near and far, with the help of fellow adventurers who share their unique travel stories. Listen to my podcast wherever you get them.
You're with Clement Manyathela
on 702.
Let's walk the talk. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
DSTV channel 856.
92.7 and 106 FM.
7 minutes after 9 o'clock, Dumelang. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Clement Manyathela Show on this 28th day of May. It's wonderful to be back with you here on 702. I hope you're well this morning. Geez, we haven't spoken since when? Last Thursday, eh? I haven't been behind his mic since last Thursday when we were still doing the show from Washington, D.C. And Thursday was following the meeting between President Cyril Ramaphosa and US President Donald Trump. And here's something else that happened that you probably don't know about, né? Because I trust you, you know, I can be vulnerable with you. Do you know what happened on Friday? So the plan was to do my show from Washington, D.C. the whole week. So on Friday, I woke up late. So when I woke up, Abel, what time was it in South Africa? 10:30. So the show was now 2.5 was what, an hour and a half in by the time that I woke up. So and here's the context. Here's the context. In the US, 9 a.m. South African time is 3 a.m. DC time, Washington DC time. So I used to wake up. So I have not slept last week a bit. And I'm not kidding you. In fact, from the time that I got on a flight to go to Washington, D.C., I had so much schoolwork. In fact, I attended class while I was mid-air. I had to attend class while I was on a flight. I was there on Zoom, in class, and even interacting, well, when they sent us into our different groups, because we normally do that in class at Gibbs. Virtually. So I didn't even have enough time to actually just sleep, and you know, there was so much schoolwork. And then by the time I arrive in DC, there's no time to sleep because now you're meeting with all these sources, and then there, you know, people in DC, like they will send you from this place and then, oh, let's meet there, and then the other person wants to meet on the other side of town, and it was just so hectic. And then from Tuesday I started doing my show from there, 3 a.m. So I used to sleep for about an hour, at most 2 hours, because I have to wake up at 1 a.m. so that I can start preparing for the show and go live DC time at 3 a.m., which was 9 a.m. South African time. So that's just the context of what happened Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday, I set my alarm. I think my body just couldn't take it. You know, sometimes you can do whatever you want, but your body sometimes will just say, my brother, I'm not coming today, and easy. Friday, I wake up at 4:30 a.m. and my alarm went off. I clearly didn't hear it. I wake up to so many missed calls from the producers here, from Abel, and I just felt so bad. But luckily, Thabo was in studio, and that's the backup system that we have with radio, right? When we're doing outside broadcasts, we always have someone in studio as a backup because, you know, anything could happen. We could experience technical glitches. So you always need someone in studio. So luckily Thabo was in studio, and thanks to Brativos for standing in over the last couple of days. And he was able to take over the show on Friday. So that's what happened on Friday. Do you know what happened this morning? This morning, I was supposed to wake up at 5:30. You know what time I woke up? I woke up at 7:05. my alarm, I had 3 different alarms that I had set, and they all went off, and I clearly didn't hear them. So that's what happens sometimes when your body just can't take it anymore. And I wonder if something like that has actually ever happened to you. Maybe you can share your story with us. Have you ever woken up late for something so significant? I mean, thank goodness my show starts at 9. Imagine if my show starts at 7 o'clock and then I wake up at 7:05. So at least I still had some time. Have you ever dealt with anything like that? And how have you actually dealt with it? Share your story. I've shared mine. 011-883-0702. The WhatsApp line is 072-702-1702. How did you recover from that? At least for me, I had Tabo in studio on Friday who could do that. Today, I had some hours to buy some time. Have you ever, maybe you woke up late for a very crucial meeting, or maybe for an interview. My goodness, imagine waking up late for an interview. Or maybe you missed your flight. You woke up late and you had completely missed your flight. How did you recover from that? Another conversation I'd like us to have on the open line this morning is around what happened in Parliament yesterday. You may have seen the Minister of Communications, Solima Latsi, talking about this equity ownership versus equity equivalence. I don't think that we must just be honest. We must just be honest and say why we are pushing for this right now. And then we can have a separate conversation about whether this is going to work or not. Because I feel like right now we're trying to create an impression that, oh no, we're doing it for everybody else. Of course, everybody else is going to benefit from it. But what has triggered it right now? Yes, it's a process that's been ongoing, but what has triggered this latest move now? And I just feel like we're not being honest about that. And in as far as the equity equivalence is concerned, the BEE legislation already allows for equity equivalence. It's the ICASA regulations that need to be aligned with the BEE legislation, at least from how I understand it. And at 11 o'clock, we are going to bring in an expert who's going to try and break it down for you. So if you've got any question about this latest proposal by the Minister of Communications, I want you to call us at 11 o'clock when we do our listener's choice feature. But my understanding is that equity equivalence already exists. Companies like Microsoft have actually opted for equity equivalence, right? But there's a moratorium, my understanding, and this is what I found out yesterday. I was in Cape Town yesterday. I was emceeing the infrastructure symposium, and part of the panels, one of the panels that I facilitated was about this specific issue. The minister's special advisors were there, and I was able to sort of get a sense from them what the rationale is. And one of the questions that I asked the minister's special advisor was about what are the benefits to equity equivalence? Is there greater benefit in equity equivalence than direct ownership of 30%? So is it better to rather say, this is what as a company, as Prime Media, we're going to do to empower the community, right? This is what we're going to do. As opposed to, as Prime Media, go and get Clement and Abel to come and be the owners, part owners of this company, and we give them 30% ownership. And I would like to suggest that maybe equity equivalence is what works, because there is then broader benefit on the ground. But at the same time, I think we also need to be the owners of this economy. It can't just be that black people only benefit from a position of, this is what the companies are doing. They're providing jobs. They're doing this. Yes, that's very important. But equally so, we need black people to also be owners of the economy. We want them to be part of decision makers in these big corporations. That's why you've got people like Patrice Motsepe today. That's why you've got people like Cyril Ramaphosa today, and many more. I can go on and on. And I think we need to find a balance between the two. I don't think we should just look at equity equivalence on its own. And the question I want to ask you this morning is, what do you think is much better? Do you think we have a greater benefit? And maybe some of you have already done equity equivalence. Maybe some of you have looked at direct ownership. I mean, we know about fronting and how direct ownership often benefits the people who are politically connected. And that benefit doesn't trickle down to the people on the ground. What do you think works better? Do you agree that we need a balance? Or do you actually think that throw away the ownership out of the window? equity equivalence is actually what works. So where is the greater benefit there? 011-883-0702 is the number to dial. The WhatsApp line is 072-702-1702.
Clement Manyathela, streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
DSTV channel 856
92.7
and 106 FM.
Hi, Clement. So, with regards to waking up late for something that's quite significant, so in my case, I had scheduled a facial this one Saturday morning. This was like last year sometime. I scheduled the facial for like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I had a meeting at work. We had like a meeting for the sales team. It was on a Saturday and it was going to be at 12 p.m. So I had gone home after the facial and sat on the couch and I was lights out. I literally woke up, I think it was at 1 p.m.
Yeah.
I did not hear a single call, did not hear anything, did not hear my phone buzzing, ringing, none of it.
So I drove to East London with a bunch of friends. It was on a Friday. 10-hour drive. We got to East London. We partied the whole weekend, hardly ever slept. And on Sunday, I had to drive back to Johannesburg, another 10-hour drive. We got to Johannesburg around 10:30 in the evening, and then the next day was work from 8 o'clock. But I woke up at 4:30 in the afternoon.
Sure. Yeah, that's hectic. I don't remember the last time. I mean, even in my young, wild days, because haven't we all had wild days? Have I ever like woken up late because of a crazy night out? I don't remember. I mean, even at university, when sometimes we used to go to parties and clubs, it didn't happen a lot. But in cases when it happened, because we used to celebrate, like maybe when we've just finished writing exams, I don't remember ever waking up too late for class. But also that's many years ago. Right now it's because of exhaustion, and I think that speaks to age. Hey, I think we're getting old, my friends. We're really getting old. And the body says to us, I can't handle this. You've put too much pressure on me. What's been your experience? 011-883-0702. I'll take your WhatsApps as well. It's 21 after 9.
Your voice,
Your station.
your open line
Walk the talk with Clement Manyathela.
on 702.
Wella, you're calling us from Reimsach. Good morning.
Morning, Clement.
Hey, Tada.
I'm glad you're back without an accent.
Yeah, I mean,
You know-
I know people go for 2 days and they come back with an accent, but I mean, it's 7 days, you know?
Yeah, my friends teased me a while ago when I went to work there. Yeah, but anyways, Clement, two things. First one, the 10% black ownership within the BEE scorecard. I'm one of the big fans that it should be kept. However, I feel that it should be, one, there must be education to the public. It doesn't necessarily go to one man or an influential man. It usually is led by an influential man, but leading for a grouping of people, depending on the specific goals of that entity for BEE. But for it maybe to be a bit better, it should be compulsory that it should be for designated groupings of people like youth, women, disabled people, or workers within that environment. For example, what Julius Malema said, that BEE would be much more palatable if the miners themselves were the shareholders in the actual mine. So the black ownership should not be. You see, there's people who distort the truth because they have an agenda of removing it. It should be broad-based, as was its intention from when black economic empowerment migrated to broad-based black economic empowerment.
Yes.
You know, the broad-based nature of it, no one will talk. But the challenge sometimes is that the funders of these schemes usually are led by a person who, more often than not, is influential, and therefore is more, the banks are more likely to fund a consortium led by an influential person, but that doesn't necessarily mean that influential person is the sole inheritor of that 30%. And I think that's where people mistake it. So it shouldn't be removed. Rather, it should be a broad-based element. And there's many successful stories of BE being broad-based and people feeling part of ownership of that entity.
And that equivalence already exists, right? Well, I mean, it's nothing new. Companies have that option, either to go equity equivalence or to go Wella and Clement, take 30%, be 30% owners of this company. But here's the question, though, Wella, I have is, how do we balance the two between equity equivalence and direct ownership? Because I do appreciate that equity equivalence, we see more broader benefit, because when it's direct ownership, companies, normally there's fronting, number one. Companies are just going to get someone, they give them $1 million, they say, give us your credentials, and we're gonna take you as a part owner of the business. But actually, you're not participating, you're not. Number two, it's politically connected people who often get those opportunities. But how do we balance the two where, yes, we've got broad-based benefit on the ground, but also we've got people who are being empowered to be direct owners of these companies?
But that's my point, Clement. An owner of an entity can be a trust. A trust can be a representative of a grouping of designated really poor people. That's one. Second is the BE scorecard. There's other elements to it, which is this equity equivalence, management control, enterprise development, skills development, socio-economic development. There's other elements within BE, and not always this fixation with ownership. Ownership is one of various different criteria of items you need to meet within that scorecard. So if we just think that ownership is always only on one person, that is where it distorts the whole intention and what this legislation is meant for. And I'm still saying, even despite that ownership, we need to make it as broad-based as possible, that it can't be one man. Yes, you can have a consortium led, you have to have one person to lead it. Whether that person is politically connected or not, then becomes irrelevant, because he is holding shares or he is leading for this consortium of a grouping of people, and that consortium must not end, or like now I buy shares from the poor people and then I end up being the sole owner of that 30%. Then that becomes a problem. You understand?
No, I get that. I get that. Well, just before you go, what's going to happen though to companies that already have direct ownership? And I know this is an unfair question to you, but I wonder what your thoughts are, because if the minister comes up with this proposal to align this ICASA law, are we not going to have a situation where companies come back, especially when they have to renew their licenses, and they say, we're letting go of direct ownership because we're trying to opt for equity equivalence? Do you think that that's something we're probably going to see going forward if this goes ahead?
I'm not sure in relation to in the telecom space. There was a rule before, they say once empowered, always empowered. Now, I do not know if that...
I remember that. That was in the mining sector, huh?
Yes, yeah. So I don't know now that when you're renewing your license, are you going to kick out the black shareholder and buy shares and then be white again, or you're going to continue with the existing relationship? You may, the new rules may possibly say, look, we would like to focus more on your initiative since you meet the ownership criteria. How about your management control? How about your skills development? How about your enterprise development? How about your contributions to society? So all of those are as important as the ownership. One mustn't just think that should be the thing. And this thing needs to be made annually for you. Your score, your BE certificate expires every year.
Yeah.
So it's not like you do it once and that's it. You do it for as long as you need to be in that industry and to participate in procurement within public sector.
Absolutely. Wella, thank you so much for your great contribution this morning, calling us from Remsach. I do remember that there was a court ruling in 2021, and someone in the mining sector, please help me, or maybe you're not in the mining sector, but you actually remember this judgment better than I do. There was a ruling in court in 2021 which set aside parts of the mining charter. I remember the court ruled that the charter provides policy guiding principles and isn't subordinate legislation. So it's not legally binding on mining companies. And that judgment also clarified that the principle of once empowered, always empowered, meaning when mining companies renew their mining rights with government, they won't have to top up their existing black ownership to the higher levels required by the charter since 2018. And I don't know if that was ever appealed, but I do remember there was a judgment to that effect, to that point that Willa was raising about once empowered, always empowered. Bunny, you are calling us from Brakpan. What are your thoughts?
Hey, Clement.
Hey, Tzara.
Yes. Yeah, sharp. Just to somewhere help you on that one. I specialize in the space. So just on that one. In 2018, when the Mine Charter 3 was published, with regards to ownership, the goalposts were shifted, to use that phrase, from 26% to 30%. And this is what's constantly happening. There's a ruling about one aspect of whether it's the Mine Charter or BEE, and then companies want to throw, as you guys would say, throw the baby out with the bathwater. So it was just on that one aspect to say that no, you can't, for companies that already have 26% black ownership, you cannot not say when you apply for a new mining right that you now need to have 30%. Because as we all know that equity ownership is very complex. So that was the ruling with regards to that. And it wasn't just in the mining sector, it was actually across board. But yes, because mining licenses, mining is the one area where you need a license to operate versus just having a manufacturing company.
I see.
Mining companies would have been affected greatly. But the reason why I called in, Clement, just too quickly, and I've always been an advocate for equity equivalence. And there's a reason why we've only seen 4 or 5 deals. I mentioned Data, Microsoft, the guys in the tech space do that because it's very complex, because they're multinationals operating out of the US or out of the UK. These companies don't enter into normal willy-nilly, for lack of a better phrasing, BEE transactions. So that's why equity equivalence was introduced to say, but there's more that we can do with in terms of developing young black talent, in developing schools, create almost our own MIT. For lack of a better phrasing. So for me, I've always been saying, let's even take the whole ownership, and I'm going to give you one example quickly because I know you have to go to headlines. Let's take the whole ownership thing and throw it completely out of the window. And this is why I'm saying this. When Praveen Gordhan, in his first budget speech, delivered the R1 trillion budget for South Africa, he made a statement at the business breakfast the following morning to say, if we're going to achieve our transformation targets, the private sector's got a critical role to play. Private sector spends about 10 times what government can spend. So if you use that example, R1 trillion times 10 becomes 10 trillion rand. Now this is the thing. There's preferential procurement, quickly on 2 elements of the broad-based part of it. There's preferential procurement and the skills development. If you say, BEE says we must spend 40%, some targets go to 50%. Of preferential procurement spend. So now you take 40% of 10 trillion. How much is that, Clement? That is, sorry man, I'm just losing my train of thought now. But 40% of 10 trillion is 4 trillion. Now that is the amount, and that is expenditure that will be set aside for black controlled and black owned entities. What can we do as a black people with 4 trillion, with 4 trillion. And that's where we are losing.
There's
the
a
plot.
lot,
If you take that, and if you take the skills development, which also runs into the billions, with the biggest country or with the biggest spenders in terms of skills development globally. I think the last figures that I saw was we spend almost times 20% what some of the other countries are spending. Why is that not trickling through?
Yeah.
Because you will use that skills in terms of how do you build industries that can then become these SME suppliers so that we can make our mark in terms of that 4 trillion rand.
Absolutely. Bunny, got you. Thank you so much for your contribution in Brakpan. It's just after 9:30.
Your voice,
Your station.
your open line
Walk the talk with Clement Manyathela.
on 702.
20 minutes before 10 o'clock. This is the 702 open line. We're taking your calls on 011-883-0702. WhatsApp's on 072-702-1702. There's someone on Twitter, Abel, who was asking about what the light moment that the president had yesterday in Cape Town when he was talking about dimming the lights. I had posted a video there on Twitter, and someone was asking about what he had said about dimming the lights and how traumatized he is. So maybe let's play you that clip, and then I'll come back and continue with your call. So just for context, the president was speaking at the infrastructure symposium, and when he walked in, the lights were dimmed, and he expressed some concern about that.
So when I came in, I saw the room going a bit dark. They darkened the room, and for a moment I wondered, what is this? It's happening to me again. Because at that moment we were seated very nicely, and I was beginning to get into a groove of, interacting with this man, and I suddenly hear him say, "No, dim the lights, dim." And I must say, a number of people have said, this was an ambush. This was an ambush. And I was bemused. I was saying, what's happening? So when I saw Clement, I said, this guy could have a role in all this. He's repeating what he experienced.
So that's what he said. I suppose it was also nice to hear the president reflect on a lighter note on what happened last week in the Oval Office in Washington, D.C. 19 minutes before 10.
Your voice.
Your station.
Your open line.
Walk the talk with Clement Manyathela
on 702.
So one of the questions I've asked you this morning is whether you've woken up too late for something so significant. And how did you recover from that? And what was the reason for that? And I'm asking you that question because I was just giving you context of what was happening last week. The broadcast pressures or pressures. Yeah. Is it pressure? Not pressure. It's pressure. You're under pressure. So the broadcast pressures last week in DC, because of the weird, times between South Africa and DC, I was hosting my show at 3 a.m. in the morning. And because I did that for, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, by Friday, I just couldn't wake up. I set my alarm. Everything was ready. I had set up my, equipment and ready to test with Abel at 1 a.m. And I just woke up at 4:30 a.m. I didn't hear my alarm. And that was 10:30 in South Africa. Luckily, Thabo was in studio and he was able to start the show and just finish it. And I just felt so bad because there's nothing I would, the worst thing that would ever happen to me is for me to miss the show, because I woke up late. That's why whenever I even do breakfast and I stand in for Bongane, I practically don't even sleep because I will wake up at 1 a.m. because I'm thinking, oh my God, am I going to wake up too late and miss the show? And then I'll wake up again at 3 a.m. and then wake up at 3:30 to get up and shower and come to work. So yeah, that's what happened. And I was asking this morning as well. Normally I'm up 5:30. Maybe I go for a run. This morning I woke up just after 7 in the morning. That's the time I should already be at work because I need to go through the papers, have a meeting with the producers. Have you ever had a moment like that where you wake up late for something? And what was the reason for that? And how did you recover from that?
Morning, Clement. It happened to me once. So I was dreaming. At work, I'm starting at 7:30. And I'm like dreaming there where I was working then. I'm dreaming as if like it's around 10 o'clock and I find myself starting work. And I had to explain myself to the boss. So as I'm explaining to the boss is shouting at me, "Why are you so late? Why?" And while I was trying to explain why I had a late night and stuff, I wake up sweating, Clement. It's 7:38. And I had to prepare myself quickly. By the way, the workplace was about 20 minutes away. And I quickly had to rush there. I was there by 8:20. That's what happened. But the dream that woke me up was so rude. Adrian from Marshalltown.
Hi, Clement. This is Melusi from Riverside. Now, I'm an Uber driver. And I also have a lift club that I do Monday to Friday. And then on weekends, I do my Uber. So this Monday, on Sunday, I worked at night and I think I knocked off around 2 a.m. And on Monday, I had to wake up at 5 to go and pick up my lift club, which I normally pick up at 6. So I normally wake up at 5, take a bath, and then I'm ready by 6. But because I was working on Sunday, I couldn't wake up this Monday. What happened was my alarm went off, but I didn't hear it. And I only woke up at about 6:10. And all my people were waiting for me and they were all late for work. Yeah, that's how crazy it was this month.
Yeah, it does get crazy, hey? Someone says, "Hey, Clement, the president's laughter is just so amazing. It just makes you smile." Yeah. Yeah, it does, hey? He's a charmer. Just like the former president, Jacob Zuma, hey? When they start laughing and they start joking around, it's quite funny. In fact, here's another clip from that symposium yesterday where the president makes, again, another light moment and laughs about it, laughs it off.
Say, let's be seated advisedly, because our program director, who was in Washington, would most probably want you to remain standing as he was standing in the Oval Office. Program director, Clement Manyathela.
Isn't it fascinating how a moment that is so significant like that some of us look at and think, "Oh my goodness, what a tragic moment," can also be a moment of something to laugh about. And I think that's one of the things I love about being South African, is we always find the light moments, even in the most difficult of circumstances, don't we? It's 13 minutes now before 10 o'clock.
Your voice,
Your station.
your open line
Walk the talk with Clement Manyathela.
on 702.
All right, let's go back to your calls on 011-883-0702. Teddy, you're in Germiston. You want to talk about this broad-based economic empowerment?
Black empowerment. Thank you, Clement. I'm not educated. I just want to start by saying I'm not educated. I'm a black kid. I don't know nothing, but I do know this, right? In that office that you're sitting in, there's a people who qualified in the banks, probably 500,000, 1 million, 250,000. What is stopping everybody in that office to go and borrow money and open the companies and hire black people? This is why I'm going with this. Let's stop with this BE nonsense, because it does not help us. There's a lot of kids who finish school right now. A lot of kids, they're not working. So now, this is what I'm thinking. If you stop that and we open a fair market, our economy is going to boom. We have a lot of people in South Africa who support, who buy and Pick and Pay, ShopRite everywhere. We're suffering because of BE. Why are we suffering because of BE? Who's benefiting? Because my friends are not benefiting. I'm not benefiting. Who's benefiting? Black politicians' kids. They are benefiting. This thing is going somewhere else. I'm saying is, let's open a fair market in South Africa. People, they will come and open their companies. They will hire these kids. It depends on you that you want to go and buy GTE, or you want to take money from the bank and open your own company and hire your brothers and sisters.
So even with the legislation we have, Teddy, there are companies that are still struggling, or let me not say struggling. There are companies that are simply refusing to transform, whether through employment equity legislation or through the BEE. legislation. So what happens then when you take away the legislation that's forcing them to transform? With legislation, they're still refusing. So if you take that away, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think you're going to have those opportunities you're asking for?
What I want to have in South Africa is if we have a fair market and everybody's allowed to do whatever they want to do. If I don't want to hire you, I don't want to hire you. If I want to pay you less, I want to pay you less. In any situation, listen, my brother, in any situation that is tough, in America, there were slaves. DMX, Puff Daddy, and all those people, they were grandparents, they were slaves for so many years. But look at them now. Let's open a fair market. If you open a fair market, our economy is going to boom up in Clement. It's going to boom. Right now, let's say there is a friend of yours, right? There is a friend of yours. He want to buy a Lamborghini. Why can't he take your money and open a bank or take your money and open a factory? Everybody want to drive nice cars, but as soon as a white person build this company and they take the money from the bank and they start in these loans, as soon as they boom, why they don't have a BE partner?
Okay, Teddy in Germiston, thank you so much for your thoughts. I think we've had many conversations, I think, on the show about B-BBEE. I mean, go and check out the levels of compliance with B-BBEE. They've been low. So if you take away a system that forces institutions to transform, what's going to happen when already the transformation is slow with the current legislation? And look, there's no doubt that B-BBEE is not perfect. Yeah? I mean, the last time I looked at the numbers that were collated by the broad-based Black Economic Empowerment Commission, they were not encouraging. They showed that the number of black business owners had decreased at some point. There's still issues around verifying the BEE levels of companies and the issue of fronting that I mentioned earlier on. But instead of scrapping the legislation, why don't you rather push for the strengthening of the regulatory frameworks? Because there's been some failure to regulate the policy. I mean, you look at the commission, which is tasked with ensuring that companies and government comply with and implement this broad-based Economic Empowerment Act. What are they actually doing to ensure implementation? To ensure that there's no fronting? To ensure that politicians are not the sole beneficiaries? So companies are interpreting the codes as they please, and there's no effective monitoring or regulating them. So I suppose my response to that caller is, why don't you try work on fixing that? Because otherwise, what kind of country are we going to be? It's easy to say, just create a fair market. Anybody can do what they please. That's not how it works. This is a capitalist system. If you're saying that, companies are just going to do whatever they want. So forget about labor laws. Forget about you being treated fairly at work. Forget about, you having mechanisms in place to take your bosses, like CCMA, for instance. If you have been unfairly dismissed, constructive dismissal, forget about those. Now we're going back to this guy was talking about slaves. That's where we're going back to then, because I can easily ask you to work for 24 hours straight. I can ask you to do that as an employer, and you can't say anything to me because actually you're saying that we must just have a fair market. The bosses and employers must do whatever they want to do. That's not the system that's going to work. And we have a unique context in this country. We need to appreciate the nuance of this country. We are not Finland. We are not Brazil. We are South Africa. We've experienced both colonialism and apartheid. There's a specific group of people in this country whose lives were, in fact, they were subhuman. The legislation of colonialism and apartheid didn't see us as equal humans. And what we need to do is to fix that. Those opportunities that we missed, people that are still left behind, we need to start empowering those people so that we level this playing field. Otherwise, we're going to continue becoming one of the most unequal countries in the world. 7 minutes before 10.
Your voice,
Your station.
your open line
Walk the talk with Clement Manyathela.
on 702.
3 minutes before 10.
Hey, good morning, Clement, Tyron Randburg. You're still beating the same drum. You've just used Patrice Motsepe as an example. Listen, that guy is a brilliant businessman. And you're trying to put every single BE appointment in the same category. It's obviously not, because our state is failing. Everything's failing. And so you want BE appointments when they're not warranted. That's the problem. You're not being honest. So we need to be honest. This is a brilliant scheme. It's good that we bring this new scheme in, and I think this is a very good idea. So let's be honest about that.
Morning, Clement. My God, there's no equivalent to equity. That word, equity equivalent, is abomination on its own. Ownership is the multimum. So you can't make up words and be creative and say there's an equivalent to equity. How? It doesn't work that way. I think we are beginning to drop the ball. It should be kept as it is. If you want to do business in South Africa, you need to consider our historical injustices. Terry here from